Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. Yes, I made it home after the last Woodland Mansion episode, but we've done a lot of exploring lately here in the overworld and it's time to change things up a little bit. Today, we're going to be spending the majority of our time in the Nether, seeking out a resource that will make our tools even better than Minecraft's iconic set of diamond gear. Today, we're going to go out in search of the ancient debris we need to upgrade our tools to netherite. I have made a couple of upgrades to my armor in the meantime. I've gotten feather falling on my boots now, which is a pretty essential enchantment for preventing fall damage. Feather falling will specifically reduce fall damage and no other type of damage, so it stacks with the other types of protection as being a very good way of making sure that you don't just fall to your death. And I find that especially useful for traversing the Nether because there are so many falls and other hazards like that in the Nether. We've also got to think about the gold armor that we need to be wearing to prevent piglin attacks. And so, even though I've now got respiration and unbreaking on this helmet as well, I'm probably going to start wearing a gold helmet for our trips to the Nether. We only lose half a point on our armor bar there, so it's not too much of a decrease in defense. And we can even enchant this golden helmet when I have enough levels to do so. So I'm going to leave my diamond helmet in this chest for now, and we're going to visit the basement really quick, just so I can grab a couple of fire resistance potions, because the better protected I am against the hazards of the Nether, the more likely it is we'll survive this little mining trip. So without further ado, we're going to head through to the Nether, and one of the first things we're going to do is find a way down. The terrain here from our Nether portal naturally spirals down towards this point here, and in terms of coordinates, we're still pretty high up in the Nether, but I think one of the things we're going to do, albeit with this rather large lava fall next to us, is dig down as far as we can. We're just going to make a single staircase down here, and yep, it leads to a section of the Crimson Forest that's a little bit lower down. Well, that's not a problem. We should just be able to staircase down, and we can see the familiar shapes of lava lakes forming down there as we get a little bit lower. We can even hear the lava bubbling all around us and now below us as we descend here into the depths of the Nether, and it may be that we have to dig a little bit further or maybe even double back on ourselves to find a point at which lava isn't directly below us in the lake like this. Looking at it, it does seem like the section of the Nether I was trying to dig down through is just floating over a lava lake, whereas there are sections like this that kind of form a shoreline. So what I think I'll do is deviate my path down this way a little bit. So where we've got this staircase, I'm actually going to indicate that we should be turning this way. Maybe leave ourselves a path with a couple of torches leading down this way, and we're going to start our first real netherite mine down here. We're going to dig through the surface, we're going to dig into some blackstone, which actually generates below the surface, below the lava lake level. So it's a neat resource to get your hands on if you haven't already found large chunks of it in a basalt delta. And as we get down here, we're naturally going to encounter a few lava sources. So I'm going to try my best to dig around some of those. If we need to make a bit of a winding, spiraling staircase down here, then we can. But obviously there are going to be some sections which you can block up and some sections that you can't. In this case, we can try and go along a couple of blocks further. You'll also find that magma blocks start to generate around areas where there is lava. So those are often an indication of where the lava is underground. But yeah, maybe we dig a little bit over to the left here and we should start to find our way down a little bit more confidently. Yes, there we go. Okay, so mining for resources in the Nether is a little bit different because there is one specific resource that we're after. You won't find any diamonds and stuff generating down here, although you will find nether quartz ore and nether gold ore still appear down here at the lower levels of the Nether. The reason we're coming down here is for one block in particular, which is ancient debris that cannot be found anywhere else in the overworld or even in the end dimension. Ancient debris can be found more or less at any height in the Nether, so it's no surprise if you've dug through some tunnels you might have encountered a block or two of it already. But the highest concentration of ancient debris can usually be found around the Y15 coordinates, so this is typically where players will start digging. The reason being, on average, between lava level and bedrock at the bottom of the world, which is at Y0 in the Nether, you will find up to 2 veins of ancient debris spawning, and there is even a chance for the bonus vein, which generates at any height in the Nether, to generate down here as well, meaning you can even encounter up to 3 veins of ancient debris in any given chunk down here at the bottom of the Nether. Now, naturally, you're not always going to be that lucky, but do some digging digging at Y15, and eventually you might encounter a block of the stuff. You need to be a little bit careful of lava sources, of course, because as we can see from the drips up here in the netherrack, there is lava directly above us at the height we're digging right now, and once again, yes, we are going to run into a little bit of nether gold ore here. Now, I'm still using my silk touch pickaxe, so we're silk touching the nether gold ore, which might actually be a good way of getting more gold out of it, seeing as smelting a single block of nether gold ore might return more gold than breaking it down into nuggets, even using fortune. But of course, using a silk touch pickaxe, it's more difficult to mend the pickaxe's durability as we go, so you might want to switch to a fortune pickaxe for a slightly longer mining trip. Occasionally, lava will pour in from the ceiling, but it's just a matter of stepping back a couple of blocks, throwing down a block of netherrack or whatever materials you've got on you, and waiting for the lava to disappear once you've blocked in the roof. You'll also find that pockets of lava generate down here, although they happen a lot more on Java Edition than they do on Bedrock Edition, so Bedrock players will sometimes even find caves down here instead of these lava pockets. From the change in ambience and the soul sand here, I detect that we are entering a soul sand valley, so we should be able to just dig on through this. Usually the biomes in which I stop tunneling for ancient debris are basalt deltas, because that's where a lot more blackstone and basalt will start to generate, and honestly, it's tougher terrain to dig through because you can't mine the blocks instantly with an efficiency pickaxe the way you can with netherrack. And right here we've encountered a pocket of lava that it's kind of difficult to place blocks around. We could, of course, swig one of our fire resistance potions, dive into the lava, and start to block off any areas that we thought would affect this tunnel, but for now, I think we've dug a long enough tunnel that we can start making branches to either side, and that's immediately into a lava lake, so that's not the ideal, but we can probably block that off, and there we go, yes, it's going to start to recede now. So maybe we won't dig that direction, maybe we'll dig in the opposite direction here and see if we find anything. Yes, there we go, at last we have found our first piece of ancient debris. Ancient debris can only be mined with a diamond pickaxe or better, and I say better because this is actually the key to getting a better pickaxe, but at last we get our first piece of ancient debris and we're awarded the Hidden in the Depths advancement. Ancient debris is effectively another ore here in the Nether, but it must be smelted to get the product. We cannot fortune it, as we can see from breaking this block here, and fortune also won't drop any kind of raw item or any additional blocks of ancient debris, because if it did that, of course, you could just place them down in the world, fortune them again, and you'd get more. Now, ancient debris only generates in veins of between 1 and 3. If you have found more ancient debris clustered together down here in the depths of the Nether, you have probably ended up finding multiple veins next to each other when the world generates 2 veins in close proximity. And if I dig this way, we end up with a little bit more lava, so I think we're probably going to wrap up this tunnel here and consider making a few more branches off to the sides here. So right now we're adopting a strategy similar to branch mining in the overworld. If we dig a single block wide tunnel here, if we move over 2 blocks and dig a single block wide tunnel 2 blocks aside from that, we're going to be uncovering basically every block around and between these tunnels, making sure that we get a more accurate picture of where the ore veins are going to be in this area. We can keep doing this by moving along 2 blocks and digging another tunnel, and sooner or later we should encounter a couple more blocks of ancient debris. Although in this case, with the tunnels being so close together, we are encountering a fair amount of lava. So there'll be some tunnels that we want to dig a little way into. There are some tunnels that will be able to dig a lot further before we encounter lava. But since ancient debris has the same kind of muddy color as soul sand and has white highlights in it the same way nether quartz does, sometimes a block will catch at the corner of your eye and you'll think it's some ancient debris, but it isn't. These blocks are exceptionally rare, but eventually your persistence will be rewarded, and we will find a couple more blocks of ancient debris. This should take us to 4, and it's occasionally possible that these veins generate on a diagonal, so it's kind of worth digging around, but we're digging into the adjacent branch mine tunnel here, so we're pretty confident that we've found all of the ancient debris that's going to be in this vein. So that is 4 pieces of ancient debris, plus a bunch of debris of other kinds. We've got an inventory full of netherrack, we've got some blackstone, some soul sand, a couple of bits and pieces of other nether resources. I think it's probably time to head back, and we can talk about what this stuff actually does. Once we are back in the overworld, we can put the ancient debris into either a furnace, which seems to have smelted some green dye more recently, or a blast furnace, which will just smelt things a little bit quicker. We're going to follow it up by crafting some of the gold nuggets that I've got into gold ingots, and that's 10 gold ingots there. We could also smelt down a bit of the nether gold ore. By the time we've done that, the blast furnace has smelted down all of this ancient debris into netherite scrap. We will extract that from the furnace. We'll probably put the rest of the nether gold ore in there as well to start smelting it, and you'll notice a new recipe has unlocked for an unusual looking ingot. In our crafting interface, we can add together 4 netherite scraps and 4 gold ingots in basically any order. This is a shapeless crafting recipe, so you can really put them wherever you want to. It will give you 1 netherite ingot, which makes this look like a very expensive material or just gold wrapped in something else, but either way, what we get is a single ingot of netherite, and as you can see, now a bunch of recipes start to unlock. However, netherite isn't just your standard crafting material. I cannot make a netherite shovel out of 2 sticks and a netherite ingot. Netherite is an upgrade material, which means we need to combine a netherite ingot with an existing piece of our diamond equipment, and you can't just do that in a crafting table either. We will need to use the smithing table. We're already familiar with the crafting recipe for a smithing table: 4 wood and 2 iron ingots. This is the villager workstation that gives you a toolsmith villager, and as for where this goes in my setup, I think I'm probably going to put it here next to the stone cutter, and we'll store my spare stone cutter in this barrel up here. But the smithing table has an interface that seems to accept ingots here, and it will only accept ingots of netherite. So, using the shovel once again as an example, if I put my shovel in here with a netherite ingot, you'll notice that it gets upgraded to a netherite shovel. It keeps the same enchantments that are applied to it if there are any already, and it increases in durability and attack damage. You'll notice this shovel only does 5.5 attack damage and has 1500 durability, more or less. The netherite basically adds close to 500 extra durability. It's 470 additional durability for diamond tools, and an extra point of attack damage as well. So if we wanted to, we could upgrade our diamond shovel to a netherite shovel and have a tool which would last for a lot longer. If you consider that Unbreaking 3 is also a factor here, we're going to be using 1 point of durability for every 4 uses of the shovel. That means this shovel is going to last for about 8,000 blocks worth of digging instead of 6,000, so pretty big upgrade. Now, at the time I'm making this video, there aren't any materials that you have to have netherite in order to acquire. Diamond is still a good enough tier of tools to acquire basically any block in the game, and especially for a tool like a shovel, you can use any shovel to acquire basically any block where the shovel is the recommended tool, I think. However, netherite has a couple of other additional advantages, one of which I'm actually going to go outside because my entire house is made of wood and I was about to set a fire underneath the floor. One of which is that netherite cannot be destroyed by fire. If we throw the netherite ingot into the fire here, it won't be destroyed like other items would. Let's use something else as an example. Let's use one of these gold ingots because we can get gold pretty cheaply. If we throw that into the fire, it's just gone. But the netherite ingot survives the fire, and it will even survive being thrown into lava. The same, by the way, is true of the ancient debris blocks that we found. They will not burn in fire or lava, so even though there is lava everywhere in the nether, it is still possible to get hold of those ancient debris blocks if they fall in lava. You've just got to find a way of getting rid of the lava or swim through it using a fire resistance effect. But this fireproof status applies to our tools and our armor even if we upgrade them to netherite. The first one I'm going to upgrade is, of course, this Fortune 3 pickaxe, because frankly, a fortune pickaxe is probably one of the most useful tools in the game. If I once again start a fire down here and I now chuck my netherite pickaxe into it, even though the flames are all around it, you'll see the item entity is still there, and we can pick up the netherite pickaxe again if we get close enough. The pickaxe now has more durability, it will mine ever so slightly faster, although not fast enough to make a significant difference to any of the blocks that we'd be mining with a diamond pickaxe. It does slightly more attack damage, and it is completely fireproof. This means that once you've upgraded all of your diamond tools into netherite, even if you die in lava, there is a possibility of you going back there, and if you can do so safely, retrieving all of your netherite tools from the lava. The rest of your inventory is still going to burn, including any other items of armor that you were wearing that weren't netherite at the time, but you can retrieve netherite equipment from a situation like that where the remainder of your items would have burned up permanently. Naturally, this makes netherite, and by the same extension ancient debris, a very desirable thing, and so we're going to explore some methods of getting hold of it a little bit more quickly than setting up the branch mine. And part of that even comes down to the fact that we're now farming wool automatically, because if we grab a bunch of wool out of one of these chests, we can start making large amounts of beds. Beds, if you remember, have explosive properties in the nether. Instead of setting your spawn point when you right-click them, they explode. So we can take advantage of this property down here in the earth when we're mining for netherite. And I think we're probably going to start an offshoot of our branch mine in this direction so that we can demonstrate this, because as you might expect, this is a pretty volatile method of searching for the goods. What you'll typically do is dig out a 5-block long tunnel, which is pretty much as far as your pickaxe can reach, and you'll either place a bed there, or if you want to, for a little bit of extra safety, you can dig out 3 blocks there, place the bed there, and it will still give you room to right-click on it. The most important thing is to have a block between you and the bed somehow, either like sideways like this, so this block here is protecting you from the blast, or a block at your foot level if the bed is at your foot level, because once we right-click this, it's going to explode like that, and that is a little bit jarring and a little bit dangerous. We instantly get set on fire, so we have to put that out right away. There's lava pouring in from the walls now, and all of the blocks of netherrack around have been destroyed. It's unleashed gravel from the ceiling, there's fire basically everywhere, and there's a lot of gravel to be gathered up here, so I'm kind of glad I'm using a silk touch shovel now. So as you can see, netherrack has a pretty low blast resistance, and breaking out this area with a bed has created this enormous pocket of air in which we would be able to find any pieces of ancient debris, because ancient debris is also, as a property, blast-proof. If you want to and you're feeling daring, you can even place another bed here, and as long as you've got a block between you and the bed, you can blow that one up as well, which will destroy even more blocks in the surrounding area and pretty much guarantee that if there's a debris in this chunk, it gets exposed. Bear in mind though, these explosions are huge, and if you don't take the proper precautions, if you don't have a block between you and the explosion like that, you are going to end up dying. So it's pretty important to bear that in mind when you take this method on. Make sure you've got a decent amount of protection on your armor if you're unsure about this method. Wearing diamond armor is probably a good idea, even though you might not want to risk potentially sacrificing it in the resulting explosion. And remember, there's a lot of fire around, so if your gear isn't netherite already, if you end up dying, there's a chance it could end up burning in the fire. Unfortunately, in this case, it looks like we didn't uncover any ancient debris at all. We might find some a little bit further down in the chunk, maybe a little bit closer towards bedrock, but to be honest, I think I want to just move forward. So we're going to dig through the next wall, we'll place our bed there, and click it again, and there we go. Once again, we are on fire. Your armor takes a fair amount of durability damage by doing this method. So let's try blowing up a bed one more time, and when the dust settles, once again, it looks like we have not encountered a vein of ancient debris in this chunk, so let's move on. Well, having got rid of a lava flow here, we do have our first chunk of ancient debris that we've uncovered using this method. There is still fire everywhere, and the fires will eventually go out if they're on blocks other than netherrack. However, on netherrack itself, fire burns forever, so there's a chance that if you want to get around here without a fire resistance potion, you'll probably end up putting out a lot of fires manually. We can grab this block of ancient debris. Let's see if there's another one behind it, which there is. It looks like a solid vein of 2, unless there are any more hiding behind the walls here. Nope, looks like we got 2 from that one. Hey, not bad though. So I'm going to break out one more area like this using the bed method. Just use up the remaining beds that I have in my inventory, but to be perfectly honest with you, I don't like this method very much. It's volatile, there are severe problems if you end up doing it wrong. It has the added problem of leaving fire everywhere, and frankly, it just feels a little bit difficult to control. Now, eventually you get into a rhythm with it, of course. You figure out how many blocks you need to travel before you place the next bed, so you don't leave areas like this pretty much closed off. And for people who like a little bit of danger and the explosive nature of it, plus the fact that we get to use beds for some cool stuff in the nether, it might be worth it. Frankly, the main advantage to this whole method is that wool and wood both come very cheap, because the next explosive method we're going to try out is a lot more expensive, but in my opinion, a lot more effective and a lot safer. For the ideal scenario of this, I need to find a bow that has the flame enchantment on it, and I do think I fished up a few of those whilst I was fishing for a bunch of stuff. Let's see if we can combine this one with the bow we've already got, with the added bonus that we'll get power 4 out of this as well. And would you look at that, it needs 13 levels, which is just barely the amount of experience I have. So we're going to grab that, and we're going to grab any TNT that I've got here in my storeroom, and maybe even craft some of it as well. I've got a decent amount of gunpowder here, but I only have a little bit of sand, and we have 10 TNT, which is probably 9 from a desert temple and 1 from buried treasure. We can craft TNT using 4 sand and 5 gunpowder per piece, but once again, this method gets fairly expensive and ultimately requires you to have a really reliable source of gunpowder. Also a reliable source of sand, and while sand is basically everywhere, you'll find it on beaches, on riverbeds, around the outsides of rivers, and in the ocean, it's most commonly found in large quantities in deserts. And you can dig it up from the ocean floor if you want to, but items floating on the surface like this with water physics and everything, they get a little bit difficult to collect. So oftentimes I like to go out to a large area of sand, like a desert, to gather a decent amount of sand from the surface. From an area like this though, it's easy enough to gather 4 stacks without changing too much about the terrain, and so we can turn the rest of our gunpowder there into TNT. We're sure to get more from creepers at some stage, but that is a pretty significant investment of both gunpowder and sand in order to get a block that we will ultimately blow up. The advantage to using TNT though is control, and we're going to dig out a long tunnel basically opposite the tunnel over here where we did all of the bed mining, and I'm going to show you quite how easy it is to mine for ancient debris using TNT. If we come across a lava obstruction like this, that's actually where I'm going to start this run of TNT, because there is a chance if we place it every 2 or 3 blocks like so, we should be able to blow out a large enough area of this tunnel that we can get around lava obstacles like that. If you've got fire spread turned on though, if you didn't disable that in your game rules when you created the world, then there is a chance that the lava will actually set fire to the TNT and light it. So that's one thing you've got to be aware of when you're using this method. But with a flame enchanted bow, if you step back and shoot the TNT from a distance with an arrow, that will light it, and you should be able to see a chain reaction of TNT going down the tunnel, which has already, over on this side, uncovered a little bit of ancient debris, whilst clearing out an area equivalent to 1 blast using the beds. Now, the fact that we uncovered 2 ancient debris here isn't necessarily proof that TNT is a better method, it's just about luck, really, but the point is, there was basically no risk to us as a player shooting TNT from a distance and watching it explode like this. I think the whole method ends up being slightly faster just because you have to be a little bit less careful about where you're placing stuff, and you can trigger a massive chain reaction in one go just by firing an arrow at some TNT from a distance. Then you can basically come through and clean up the tunnel after you. There are no fires around everywhere except for where the arrow has fallen down here, but even that isn't going to set the player on fire. We have another ancient debris over here and a little bit more behind it as well. Perfect. And once we reach the end of this area with the TNT, we can see the size of the lava pocket that has generated here underneath the nether terrain. So this can be what we use to decide whether we're going to continue down this tunnel or if we're just going to give it up and leave. And frankly, only having placed a few TNT there, coming away with 4 ancient debris, I'm quite happy with. I left the other 2 back at the house that we got from the bed mining method, but frankly, I think the TNT mining method is going to be a lot better. As with the bed method, if we want to, we can just go a few blocks over and start another TNT tunnel with the hope that it bypasses that lava pocket. And a good way of measuring these out, aside from just counting, is if you use Java's F3 and G debug shortcut to show chunk borders, because that will wrap a wireframe around the chunk that you're standing in, which will allow you to easily see where the next chunk begins. So if we want to do this by chunk borders, we can simply start digging here. We can dig a tunnel basically as far as we want to go along this chunk border, remembering that we've only got about 45 TNT on us, so I think somewhere past this gravel patch should be enough. And then you can place the TNT 3 blocks apart, even 4 blocks apart to get a decent chain reaction. You might have to restart the chain reaction every so often once the TNT falls out of place, once the TNT next to it has effectively exploded the terrain underneath, but anywhere between 2 and 4 blocks apart is a decent distance for TNT to have a chain reaction. As before, you kind of get into a rhythm of placing it, so it should be fairly easy to fill up this tunnel with a decent amount of TNT. And I seem to have judged that pretty well, because I think we're only about 10 blocks away from the tunnel that we started this whole thing with, so if I just shoot an arrow at that nearest piece of TNT, we should get a bit of a chain reaction starting further down the line, uncovering all sorts of material as it goes, which doesn't always mean ancient debris, but it can mean we get some quartz, we get some blackstone, we get a little bit of the nether gold ore around here. Naturally, there's a little bit of lava loosed from the nearby walls. That may even be the lava lake that we had to stop at in our previous tunnel, but as we can see down here, we're able to grab a little bit more ancient debris from the area we've uncovered. Once we get hold of that, we just need to start the chain reaction again, and our TNT will explode its way further. We'll talk about TNT mechanics a little bit more in a future episode, because fuse timing is a factor here. If we light it manually using flint and steel or a flame bow, then it explodes after, I think, 4 seconds, so you have ample time to run away. However, any of the subsequent TNT that it lights up in this chain reaction, anything that ends up getting lit on fire by a nearby explosion, does get a randomized fuse time, so it can be very, very quick to explode the next piece, and that makes TNT reactions a little bit more volatile if you're up close. If you're not up close though, it's a pretty effective method of controlling your way down here, with the only disadvantage, I think, being the expense of the TNT and the fact that it opens up such a wide area for potential mob spawning. Since we're in the Crimson Forest right now, you can tell from all of the particles everywhere, we will need to worry about piglins and hoglins being present on our way back. And there's one now, actually. I think the hoglins will be the more of the problem, since they're more aggressive to the player regardless of what the player is wearing, but I think it's honestly worth the trade-off. And there's another beautiful vein of ancient debris waiting for us in the walls. That should be 2 more, and I think that brings us to a total of 8, meaning we can make 2 more netherite ingots. I've placed all of the TNT I brought with me, but I'm really hoping for a couple more pieces of debris with those last 2. Unfortunately, that is not the case, so we might have to do a little bit more digging or a little bit more TNT crafting in future if we want to grab a bit more ancient debris. And honestly, just by digging a tunnel at Y15, you are quite likely to encounter the occasional ancient debris that way, which means you could go looking for it manually if you wanted to. However, the sheer rarity of it within a single chunk of nether terrain is kind of why I think it makes sense to use some of the more explosive methods like beds or TNT. So back in the overworld, we're going to smelt down a little bit more of the ancient debris. We might as well make these 2 debris here into netherite scrap as well, considering that we're going to need those eventually. We'll drop off all of the netherrack in this overstock chest here and tuck the other nether drops away. We can be using a bit more of the quartz for redstone a little bit later. But with 8 netherite scrap pulled out of the blast furnace, we can make 2 more ingots of netherite. And now we need to consider exactly which of our pieces of equipment we're going to upgrade. I think an obvious one, a no-brainer really, is the silk touch pickaxe, because we're going to need that one as much as we need the fortune pickaxe ultimately. It's nice for it to have a little bit of extra durability, especially since we get to mend this one less often than the fortune pickaxe, so I'm going to upgrade that one. They're the most important tools in the game. We might as well upgrade our silk touch pickaxe. I think it would make sense to upgrade a piece of our armor as well, and here's where the choice becomes a little bit more difficult, because we've got this helmet which is now enchanted with everything we could possibly need on it. However, we're going to be swapping out our gold helmet when we go to the nether, so it's not of utmost importance unless we're going diving somewhere in the overworld, for example. The chest plate is going to provide the most protection for us, but we're also going to swap out the chest plate for some wings when we get to go to the end and get hold of elytra. So we're not always going to be using our chest plate. Right now it's very useful to us, but in the long run it's not going to have a huge amount of priority. The leggings provide the next most amount of protection, but they're not all that special. We could remake leggings with these enchantments in future if we wanted to. I think, honestly, I'm going to put this netherite upgrade on my boots, because they've got a bunch of enchantments that are going to be incredibly useful to us. Now we've got feather falling on them. I think they're more or less the perfect set of boots. Fire protection is actually kind of useful considering we have regular protection on the rest of our gear. I think these boots are a lock-in. Now, the cool thing about this is we can see what the difference is between diamond and netherite when it comes to armor. You'll have to take my word for it that there's a durability increase, although it's not 500 extra durability like it is for these tools. It is a pretty significant amount. You also get an additional point of armor toughness and a point of knockback resistance. Armor toughness is a quality that only applies to diamond and netherite armor, and basically what it does is reduce the amount of damage you take from really heavy hits from mobs that can do a bunch of damage all at once, like an enderman, for example, or a hoglin, or some of the stuff that hits really hard in the game. Armor toughness is a stat that reduces that amount of damage, and that's unique to diamond and netherite. Netherite has one additional point of it, which can be quite useful, and it gives you an additional point of knockback resistance, meaning that if you get hit with a punch bow, for example, it knocks you back less far than it would if you were just wearing diamond armor. So that's going to be what we upgrade to netherite, and we are now the proud owner of a fancy set of netherite boots. While of course we might need some different boots for exploring elsewhere in the world, like some leather boots for those snowy grove biomes and everything else, I think the boots are a pretty decent choice, and I think we're also going to spend a little bit more time gathering TNT and stuff so that we can do a bit more netherite mining in the near future. So we might have some weird mismatched looking armor for a little while, but I think it's going to be worth it to upgrade everything we have to netherite in the near future. And that is where we're going to leave this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. I do hope you've enjoyed taking this look at Netherite with me. Hopefully you have good luck finding ancient debris in your own worlds. Just stay safe out there. And don't forget to leave a like on this video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.